Hey all, Dr. Paul Borosky here, owner of Quality Business Plan. And in this video, what I'd like to do is to share with y'all what is included in a typical traditional business plan. And so what I'll do is I'll run through an example, I'll give you some tips and tricks, and I'll show you what to expect if you do purchase one of my traditional business plans. All right, let's go ahead and jump right into it. All right, so this business plan right here is just an old business plan that I updated from a previous company that I used to have. And so what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and run right through it and show you the components, the structure, and the quantity of information and the writing style, again, in a traditional business plan. All right, so we got the title page first and foremost, and title page, I'll put either a space holder like this right here or a company logo. Underneath that, I'll have my title right here as the writer. Next, we're going to have the table of contents. Typically, my traditional business plans or a traditional business plan should be about 30 to 35 pages, and this one falls nicely at 31 pages. The next section is the confidentiality and disclaimer statement, and this is just pretty typical boilerplate stuff. And then the next is the executive summary. In the executive summary, you kind of want to tell your story, what your business does, how it does it, and from there you want to go ahead and tell the reader what your competitive advantages are, what do you do better than everybody else. And then from that, you want to tell them who your target market is, who's going to best use your services. Once you're done with that, you want to touch on your financial highlights, how much money you're going to make, and what your net profits are expected to be. Nice little chart. And then finally, how much money you need to get this party started or to expand operations. The next section is going to be a company description. Again, right here, a business overview and summary. Lead it off with that. From there, get into your services, because once you introduce your business, boom, hit those services, explain your services, what you do and how you do it. From there, discuss your target market real quick, and then add a little bit more meat to the bone for your competitive advantages. Same chart as earlier in the executive summary, but you want to add context and text to it right here. The next section is going to be the location section. In the location section, you want to go ahead and just describe your business, the physical property and such. All right, and from there, we'll have a picture, and then we'll talk about the future plans, where your organization is going to go. And then we also talk about the hours of operation and the personnel. All right, let's go ahead and move to the next section. And the next section up is the SWOT analysis. The SWOT analysis, pretty straightforward. It's going to be your strengths and weaknesses, and that is your internal environment for your business. And then also your opportunities and threats. We'll talk about those really briefly. And that's going to be a review of your external environment. The next section from there is going to be the industry analysis. Industry analysis is, again, pretty straightforward. We'll take a look at your industry that you're going to be competing in, sum it up in about a paragraph. We'll take a look at the overall revenues for the industry. And then we'll talk about two or three or four industry trends, just depending on the situation and the industry. Next section is going to be your organization and management. We'll talk about the ownership, the legal structure of your business right here, and then we'll go ahead and include an organizational chart. From there, we'll also go ahead and state that if you do provide me with a resume, or if you do have a resume, make sure to put it in the appendix, and then state that it is in the appendix as well. Next section is going to be your marketing and sales. How are you going to be doing your marketing? And I'll go ahead and include just a introduction paragraph right here. And then from there, we'll talk about networking, traditional social media, and website marketing, about a page for the marketing section. And then once we're done with that, we'll talk about funding requests. How much money do you need to get this party started? Nice little chart right here. We'll talk about whether it's debt or equity you're going to need to get this party started, like I said, or to expand your business. And then we'll also go ahead and put your startup cost here. Important note about your startup cost is you don't want to go ahead and itemize every little penny that you're going to be spending, and you don't want to justify every nail and every screw and every, what have you. Make sure to put them in nice little buckets like here, operating capital, furniture and decor, advertising and such. Do nice little broad buckets. That way you're giving yourself a little bit of wiggle room. Next section is going to be the financial projections. Financial projections, I always start off a traditional business plan with a summary of the revenues and the expenses and net profits. Nice little chart here. And then assumptions. We all know financial projections are made up. That's not a secret. Everybody knows that we can't predict the future. However, what we can do is tell the reader, whether it be an investor or a loan officer, where we're getting our information from. What is our thoughts and ideas as a foundation for our financials, and that's where the assumptions come in. Is it allows us to explain why we think what we think for these financials. So these are the assumptions that we lay out. And then from there, you very rarely want to throw your reader directly into your financial projections without, again, we did the assumptions. Now you want to lay it out part by part by part and build up to your financials. And that's exactly what I do with this. We'll talk about initial daily sales. Then we'll talk about initial monthly labor. From there, we'll go ahead and show what the initial monthly fixed costs are going to be. I'll break it out into a pie chart. And then we'll talk about the growth rates, how the revenues are going to grow for each of the years. Your cost of goods, how are they going to grow? Your advertising, your office, utilities, and such. And then finally, we now get into the profit and loss. Again, we don't get into the pro forma yet. We get into the profit and loss. And for the profit and loss, I break it up month to month as well as quarterly. Profit and loss year 1, quarter 1, month 1 through month 3, quarter 1. And then we'll have month 4 through 6, quarter 2, month 7 through 9, quarter 3, and then 10 through 12, quarter 4. Then we'll get into a common size where I compare the dollar amounts of the salary, labor as compared to revenues, just give them a different perspective on the financials. And then we get into the profit and loss year 2, quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. And now they're ready for the financials. Now they're ready for the pro forma income statement, which is going to be for 5 years, revenues, expenses, and net income. And then we get into the balance sheet. With the balance sheet, you'll have your cash and you have your assets as well as liabilities. And then finally, we're going to get into the break-even analysis, also a chart for the break-even. And then we'll also include financial ratios. And of course, I'm only going to include, these are all the financial ratios I can possibly put in there. And I'll just use the ones that are relevant to your organization. For example, if you don't have inventory, what's the point of putting inventory turnover in there? We'll do a little bit of a payback period, and then we'll end it up with an appendix, which is usually going to be your resume, or if there's documentation that you want to include in your business plan, but doesn't fall into any of the other areas, we'll include it here. All right, hopefully this information was helpful. As always, you need a little bit of help with the traditional business plan, reach out and go out and make a little bit of money. And let's go ahead and wrap it up. And hopefully you'll find this information helpful. Again, Dr. Paul Borosky here, owner of Quality Business Plan. And my main service that I provide is helping small business owners implement my organized plan growth strategy. I also provide business plan writing and financial projection models. I do organizational management, fractional COO, CFO services, and this in general business consulting. If you need some service, feel free to reach out. Thanks.